Okay. After all of our effusive praise for Shane Meadows and, in this case, particularly Stephen Graham, we're going to move on to something that has no Stephen Graham but has lots of Shane Meadows. That's a terrible linking device, but that's the best I can come up with just now. Scott Summerstown.
Yes. Summerstown, which sees Thomas Turgoose returning as the imaginatively named Tom, occasionally Tomo, a young un fleeing from quote-unquote the north to old London town, where the streets are paved with, in this case, beatings from a local group of youths. Tom soon finds himself sleeping rough in the titular Somerstown area, but strikes up a friendship with Peter Jagiello's Marek, over from Poland with his father, roaming the streets with a camera while his father works on the overhaul of the St Pancras train station to accommodate Eurostar, who funded the film, which may perhaps explain a few otherwise mildly inexplicable moments. While Tom's fleeing some family trauma and isolation, Marek has some of his own going on, worrying that his father is spending too much time drinking with his new friends and too little time with him, so it's perhaps no surprise the two wind up fast friends, strained only by falling for the same unattainably pretty waitress at local cafe, Eliza Lasowski's Maria, who's a good 5 years older. Their various low-key scrapes and escapades, mixed with a touch of pathos, makes up the bulk of the slender running time, and most entertaining they are too. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. There's not a great deal of narrative getting in the way of the character interactions here, and indeed almost nothing in the way of drama, barring a couple of arguments and a closing act trip to Paris, via the convenient and reasonably priced Eurostar service. Consult your doctor to see if Eurostar is right for you. Eurostar should only be consumed as part of a balanced diet, and your Eurostar may be at risk if you don't keep up repayments. Eurostar. It's what's for dinner. Of course, I joke, and while I don't think you could say that the Eurostar references are anything other than shoehorned in, they're infrequent enough that this should not be written off as a glorified advert, as you'd be missing what might just be Meadows' most charming and perhaps also his funniest film. It's carried in large part by the charisma of Turgoose, whose cheeky wide boy act is a very enjoyable thing to watch, and marries well with Jagiello's straight man act. Jagiello also gets the best dramatic moments, his strained relationship with his obviously loving but troubled father and separation from his mother feeling all too believable, and a reminder that there's more to unite the working classes from around the globe than there is to separate them, which makes this a bit of a harder watch for near-communist Europhiles like myself than a post-Brexit world, but that's not a fault of the film. It's the fault of stupid racists. Anyway, a charming little film with great central performances from the young cast and a very enjoyable supporting turn from Perry Benson's ersatz Del Boy. It's well worth putting on your radar. Some films are just nice.
Yes, once again proving that our politics, Scott, you and I think mostly Craig, are like pretty much identical. Yeah, I was quite worried about returning to this because when this was released, I was exceptionally effusive about it. Indeed, I was so enthusiastic about it that a quote from my review of it back at the time was used in the press materials for this film. So I was like, oh God, please let
this better be good.
And it's not quite as good as I remember, but mostly.
Yeah.
I just think I'm a miserable old bastard now. Yeah, it's just lovely. It's a surprisingly short film.
Yeah. It's barely feature length. Yeah, barely feature length. Yeah.
Something I've quite appreciated with Shane Meadows, like his films are as long as they need to be.
Yeah, and no longer. Yes.
But with the exception of Small Time, which needed to be not made. But, I guess he's got to get to his next film with some. It's just lovely. The way I described it at the time was being, even though it's in black and white, it radiates sunshine. That still comes through to me. It's a joyous little film. And does it have much to say? Not really, I guess. But it's another wonderful performance from Thomas Turgoose. You know, he's not always like, he's a bit of a cheeky soul, frankly, in some of it. But, you know, those people exist. And he's a kid with a kind of crappy background, having been raised in a children's home with no other family. It's really nice. The ending section where it finally turns to colour, but kind of 8mm home video stuff.
Yeah. It's
probably a bit unrealistic, but you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
It's just nice. When there are some unpleasant things that happen in the film, particularly when Tom was assaulted and has his stuff stolen. But other than that, it's just this beautiful, charming, warm lovely little film that just makes me happy. Wish there was more films that made me happy, more anything that made me as happy as this film makes me. You know, honestly, a person in a heavy Polish accent telling someone to shit in a bag and throw it out of the window ought not to amuse me as much as it does, but it does. Yeah, and the idea that the notion that this came from basically a marketing call. This was to promote St. Pancras Station and Eurostars. Like, it turned into a film that's not just like competent, but like excellent.
Yeah.
And charming and delightful and wonderful and funny, and it's like, that's incredible.
Yeah, and a lot of people, well, at least a lot of critics, seem to write it off purely on the basis that the funding came from, broadly speaking, a commercial enterprise in a way that hadn't before, and that seems to really be doing it a disservice. I can kind of see their point in a kind of wider contextual idea, but if you just actually watched the film, then it's good. Watch the film. Just appreciate the film.
Where the money came from, as long as it's not an organ farm or
the Eurostar part of it is like barely in there anyway. It's almost entirely an irrelevance.
Yeah.
Another thing I said in my review back at the time was that I was really, really salty about Mike Leigh's Happy-Go-Lucky at the time, because that's garbage.
It's awful.
Yes.
Yes.
Eddie Marson.
Yes.
But like I said that this was the quote that was used in the press material at the time, was like attention, Mike Leigh, this is how you make a happy film, like an upbeat film. I'm really pleased to see that it still stands up. It's I don't know, it's just such a lovely film. It's slight. I don't think it has a particularly a lot to say. Just like real people, and they'd said too at the time that it's that Shane Meadows is known for more downbeat films. This is, I'm quoting from one review on the oneliner.com. Having gone back, I don't actually think Shane Meadows' films are downbeat at all. There's always this, it's more than a kernel, there's a strong, like, this message of hope in there. But this is one where, rather than it being a sort of like a core of hope and that things can get better, it's like the whole film is just like lovely. Yes, there's some kind of bad stuff in the background of some of the characters, but it's just such a joyous film.
Yeah.
It's not as complete a film as This Is England. It doesn't have as much to say, but it's bloody nice. And you know what? Sometimes nice is just, well, nice. I like nice. I'm fed up of not nice. There's too much of that in the world. This is just a charming, lovely little film.
Yes, indeed.
I still haven't seen it, so...
Oh, please remedy that, Craig. It's a lovely wee thing. It's surprisingly short. It's not 70 minutes. It may not be much beyond an hour.
Hour and 11, according to IMDb.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable. And it's not like that's not the material. It's like, this is a stream is clear. This is a story I want to tell with these characters. That's the material I have for that. That's all it needs. No unnecessary padding, but not like edited unnecessarily or anything like that. It's just lovely. Mm-hmm. And, even like, it doesn't actually have a great many characters. There's Maria, I guess a cafe shop owner, Marek's dad, Perry Benson and Tomo and Maria. Yeah, that's about it. But they kind of, it's a recurring theme through this episode. They feel like real people.
Yeah.
You can imagine meeting people. I guess there's the Game of Thrones woman, whose name immediately escapes me, that's in it too. But there's not many characters. They feel real. They don't feel like caricatures or anything. And I had a point somewhere. The point is gone. It's just nice. Nice is good. I like nice. Nice is underrated.